Hi, you are listening to Baachu Talk, a podcast for government services professionals. My name is Sutherland, and I will be sitting down with our government services leaders to share their stories, discuss their career, and learn all about their values and collective impact in our society. Today's guest is Chosun Sutherland. Chosun is the head of market intelligence for JLL's Corporate Solutions Product Organization. In this role, Susie leads a global team that researches key factors that drive product strategy around market opportunities, competitor analysis, industry trends, and more. Previously, she spent over 5 years as the head of corporate solution research for Asia Pacific at JLL, based in Singapore. In this role, she oversaw global and regional research and consultancy projects around trends and themes that impact corporate real estate, including the future of work and flexible workspace, which I know is a very, very hot topic now. She also co-leads JLL's regional research on flexible space and has led direct client engagement with investor and corporate clients around Asia Pacific on this very topic. Susie has presented at numerous industry forums, including IFMA, RICS, Corenet, and Coworking Forum, and is interviewed by trade and business press, including the Business Times, Straits Times Singapore, Nikkei Asian Review, and Korea Economy Chosun. Prior to JLL, Susie worked for over 8 years for McKinsey and Company in the US and in UK, laterally as a research specialist for the infrastructure and real estate practice, working with clients around the world and across the property life cycle. Chosun holds bachelor's degree in economics from Wellesley College, USA, and Master of Science in Library and Information Science from University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. There's a lot to cover here. Susie, welcome to Baachu Talk. Great to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on today.
Yes, Susie. So let's go back to the very beginning. Susie, where were you born? And let's talk about your high school and education.
Yeah, sure. So I was born in the U.S. I was born in St. Louis, Missouri, as in meet me in St. Louis, as most people know it from. So I was born in the Midwest. My family and my immediate family and some of my close friends still live there. It's kind of a medium-sized city. Some people call it a very big small town. So I still have very, very strong connections there. I went to my local state high school called Clayton High School, and which is also the high school that my father went to and two of my uncles went to. So this is very typical for St. Louis. There's a lot of people who go there, live there, leave and come back, although I've clearly stayed away for a long time. So yeah, that's my younger life. I mean, in terms of my university education, I then moved to Boston and I studied, as mentioned earlier, at Wellesley College. I have my undergraduate degree in economics, but after working for a couple of years, I also went back and got my master's degree in library and information science at the University of Illinois, which is a very different experience, both in terms of the university and in terms of what I studied. But it gave me a pretty broad foundation for what I ultimately have done.
Totally. Economics at Wellesley to Master of Science in Library and Information Science. What fascinated you to move into library?
Yes, well, I mean, in case you're wondering, that means I am a librarian. I do have a degree in this. And the University of Illinois is one of the best places in the US, in case anyone didn't know, to get that kind of qualification, which there are actually surprisingly a lot of people who have a degree in library and information science once you start talking to people. So basically, right after I graduated from my undergraduate and my degree in economics, I worked for about 3 years as an assistant to the partners at a very small private equity firm. And I have to say that I worked with 3 men who are basically the same age as my father. This could have gone many different ways, but it was actually an amazing experience for me because being a small company, working with people who are kind of very established in their careers, very, very knowledgeable, and very interested in supporting me and to supporting young people. They had a series of people who just graduated from university come in and support them to do kind of some of their investor reporting, kind of some administrative work, organizing meetings. So I got to do a lot and I got to learn a lot. Just a very funny anecdote from this time is that one of their, this shows my age, one of their investments at the time was a search engine. And I remember they asked me one day to test searching different terms in this company, in this website, and then something new that was called Google that we had just heard about. And I remember thinking Google is far better than anything that was generated by this other search engine. So again, this shows my age because Google was very new at the time. But it was a wonderful experience. I got to have, just a gentle introduction to the professional world. And it built my confidence quite a lot. Working with people who were so well established and so interested in helping me build a foundation for my career.
Perfect. And was that your very first job, Susie, before, after education, or did you had any other part-time roles in between?
Oh, yes. I'd had, when I was younger, like in school and during some summer vacations, I sold shoes in various, I worked in retail, which was also, I guess you could say I was very shy and very introverted. And this is where I found a job, and it kind of forced me out of my shell a little bit. So that was I have not gone back to retail since I was about 20 years old, but it was good at the time.
Perfect. Susie. So after that private equity experience, you moved to do masters, is it? Or you had further stints before you moved on?
No, I went, well, actually, it's kind of an interesting part of the story. So I left that job because it was a small company, right? And I wanted to have a different kind of work experience. I was living in Boston at the time. I was also very open to moving to a different part of the US or the world. And so I did what a lot of people who are quite young and early in their careers do, which is I moved back home to St. Louis for a short time while I sorted this out. And during that time, I kind of came to me, I started doing some exploration of what I wanted to do next. And I realized it's something that kind of sat in the back of my mind. So I worked in the library when I was at university, actually, as well. And I really enjoyed that. And I thought, maybe this is the time in my life where I could actually pursue this qualification, right? And get a master's degree in this discipline. When I don't have any other kind of commitments and financially I could make it work. So I spent a few months, I applied to a few of the programs and I got accepted to University of Illinois, which is not that far away from where I was living with my family in St. Louis. So I got accepted and then I went several months later. But interesting wrinkle to the story is that during this time when I was waiting to start my program, I took a temporary job, a temp admin job, and because I'm not someone who likes to sit around and not work. And I ended up being placed in a small real estate brokerage firm. It's actually a regional firm that's based in my hometown. And I was an assistant to some of the brokers and preparing materials with them, working with the marketing team. And actually the woman who I replaced during her holiday actually never came back. So I ended up staying there for a lot longer than I planned. And they actually invited me to stay there permanently. But I said, no, I'm going off to study. But they said, you can always come back here. But that was kind of one of probably my first real exposure to the real estate industry was in this kind of regional firm that I worked at for maybe about 6 to 8 months during that interim period.
Got you. And after that 6 months intern period, you went for your master's.
Yeah.
And what happened next?
Yeah, so I went and I studied. I really enjoyed it. I wasn't sure what was next. Yes, naturally it would be a librarian, but I wasn't sure that being like a school or university librarian was exactly where I wanted to go, financially and otherwise. But I went to a conference with some of my classmates, and I discovered that this is not maybe so long I don't know if it's still happening, but at that time, I discovered there were a lot of people who had kind of library qualifications or degrees that worked in kind of professional or corporate settings, doing research or doing, other sort of strategic functions. And at this conference, I actually met some people from McKinsey and Company, and who were librarians, who had the qualifications. They had kind of a stall, and I met them. They encouraged me to apply for a job with them at their research center in North America, which is back in Boston. And so I would say this was maybe in June or July. And a few months later, I started interviewing with them, and I got the job. And I finished my degree, and I started with them a couple of months later, having moved back to Boston in the meantime. So I came back to where I started from. But so it was kind of by chance that I met, met these contacts that opened up this opportunity for me.
Now you are officially entering your real estate.
That's right. Well, I was hired when I was hired and working at this kind of research center outside of Boston. I was kind of as a generalist at that time. But this was probably 2005 and 2006, around that time. And I kind of dabbled in different, we basically, the knowledge and research function at McKinsey, which has changed, and I can't speak for how it works at the moment. But, at that time, 10, 15 years ago, we basically work with providing research and guidance to our consulting teams on various topics, right? Because they're functional experts, the consultants. They go from client to client. More junior consultants are more generalists. They're working with clients in different industries. The more senior you go, the more specialized you go in a particular industry, and deepening the relationships with clients in that area. But, on the more junior levels, they are bringing their functional skills and intellect to solving the client's problems. But in terms of understanding the industries and understanding different topics, they need support, and that's where we fit in. So I basically worked across, all different industries. But one of my colleagues, she was kind of putting together this kind of, I guess we would call it an interest group of some of us who worked in the office who kind of had an interest in or had spent a lot of time on real estate or construction related topics, because we had no industry practice at McKinsey around that at the time, like we did for retail or financial services or others. So kind of put together this interest group, and we were kind of the people that were loosely everyone would go to learn about these topics if we got requests from consultants around them. So, and these are the people that I, in the US, but also a few people in Europe as well, just sharing our insights and our learnings and our resources around researching this industry. And this is when the housing market was going crazy, right? So there was a lot of interest in this, but we didn't have a natural home for it. So that's where, I kind of linked in with this group and maintained that relationship as this kind of specialism evolved over time.
So the property life cycle or a real estate life cycle, Susie, what's the beginning and what's the end?
Well, I guess you think about it. I mean, whether it's residential real estate or commercial real estate, you're thinking about it from the very beginning, from the kind of land development, right? We talk about, in JLL, in my current role in corporate solutions, you can kind of think about it in a slightly different way, from, renting the property to, do renovation and fit out, to maintaining it, which is facilities management and the ongoing OPEX, to, disposing of it, and that's kind of the whole life cycle there, right? Very simply put. But, more broadly, if you're looking at the broader industry, you're looking for everything from the land and buying the land and and developing it, to all the way through to kind of construction, to maintenance and ongoing operations, which is kind of where JLL and corporate solutions is. And so actually mapping that whole value chain or life cycle out is something that we really focused on doing, right? And helping people to understand what that looked like in that role.
Totally, Susie, totally. So 8 long years in McKinsey, do you have any interesting opportunities or any interesting memories or any funny memories?
Oh yeah, it's a wonderful company, and it's a wonderful place to learn because there are a lot of brilliant people that work there. That is for sure, right? And you're always stretched in terms of your learning, in terms of your output, and in terms of anyone who's kind of familiar with McKinsey knows that there's a big focus on how we communicate, whether it's like the messaging, the structure of your slide presentations, how you put together an individual slide. There's a very standard way of doing it, and you're very well trained in that. And they spend a lot of time and money and effort on training everyone around that. So it's an incredible place, and also there's a big focus on making your own path. So as described, I ended up moving to the UK in my role. That was purely a personal decision. I had gone there for a secondment and I really enjoyed it, working in our UK and Ireland office based in London. So about a year after I started there, I moved to London permanently. I again was a generalist there, but I did have this kind of focus specialism around real estate. And then eventually, after a couple of years, that actually coalesced into a formal industry practice. And my person that pulled me into it all those years ago, based in the US, she became kind of the practice manager, and she asked me to join the team and focus on that full time. So I think one interesting thing is I've kind of made my own path there, which was really gratifying. I got to work on a few different client projects. And I can't name names, but some in the UK. I worked on a client project in the Middle East, which was very interesting to say the least. And also the social aspect. It's a very social place. People work hard, and they also form very strong friendships. So I have many, many friends and great memories from that time. Still, and some of these people are still my friends to this day. So it's been a really important part of my life. And I have to say that even though I've been with JLL for a while, whenever I talk about McKinsey, I still say we, right? Because you do have that kind of allegiance to them. And that's kind of part of, they do all this investment they put in their people, that kind of comes back to them in that way, right? You do have that kind of loyalty and allegiance to them. So it's a great place. I mean, I know it doesn't sometimes get some negative press, but I would say for the people that work there, it's genuinely a great experience.
Totally. So from then on, you moved gradually from towards the east, and
Yes.
And you have a JLL, Asia Pacific or Singapore. Can you share your journey from London all the way there?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'd been there at McKinsey for a long time. As I said, I really enjoyed it, but my client opportunities based out of London were pretty limited, and that's really how it was going to grow. And at that time, there wasn't an opportunity for me to have mobility elsewhere. So just right about that time, I hadn't really started actively looking for other things outside of the firm. But funnily enough, an opportunity kind of landed in my email box from JLL for a role based in Singapore. Funnily enough, I found out later that I wasn't like headhunted directly via LinkedIn or anything like that. Basically, a colleague of mine based in India, had been approached about this role, being based in Asia and in the research function. He was somebody that I did a lot of training courses or led them when I was at McKinsey for other researchers. And so I got to know him and quite a lot of other colleagues in India and elsewhere. So he was approached about the role. And later he told me that he was like, this really isn't for me, but I know exactly the person that you should be talking to. She's not in Asia right now, but she may be interested in this role. And so he referred this recruiter to me. And so, the rest is kind of history. I was really interested in the role because at that time I was really open to something new, and I was interested in, potentially making another move. So I entered for that role, and a few months later arrived in Singapore to take the role as kind of the corporate solutions research and thought leadership lead for Asia Pacific. That was in the end of 2013. So that was a big change for me, but and it also highlighted to me very quickly how much I didn't know about the real estate industry, looking at it from the outside in all that time. But yeah, so that it was definitely the right move for me to and that's something that's quite, I would say, very common, right? Especially for the researchers at McKinsey, you get to a certain point and you want to go into industry, right? Rather than sitting on the outside. So it was kind of a natural move for me. And I've had other colleagues that have done that as well.
And now you are totally immersed yourself in the corporate solution research. So
yes.
What are some of the components in researching real estate?
Yeah, so I guess I should probably frame it out by saying that this is a question I got actually just last week from a colleague of mine, new colleague who had just joined JLL, around what I do now versus kind of my previous role, right, which was research lead. And, in the past year, I've moved into the role in the product market intelligence lead, a global role, right? Both are research, right? But I'd say that they're different in the following way. The first, which is, some of our big global thought leadership projects that I led in the region and did kind of thought leadership projects in the region, supporting the corporate solutions business and more broadly. That is really true thought leadership. That's really around, looking at some of the bigger trends, talking to our clients, talking to people and doing surveys across the industry, combining all of that and putting original thinking around it to say, these are some of the big trends that we are seeing. Here's some of the research that kind of lies behind it, to really inform and create a point of view around where our industry is going and ultimately how we can support clients in these emerging needs, right? The research that I'm doing now is really more strategic research. It's really around, here's our products and services that we're delivering for clients. Here's our portfolio, or here's some new products. Here's our existing products. What are the, really understanding what the market opportunity is, quantifying it down to the regional or country level, identifying targets, identifying segments of client needs, looking at the competitive landscape and seeing where we are differentiated. So it's really around informing, as it was mentioned in the intro, around informing our strategy around our products and how we take them to market versus the bigger, broader research. And they're very connected because actually our global research function in corporate solutions is now part of the product, this new product organization, because that is kind of feeding us with ideas for new products and services to address these emerging needs. So that's kind of the beginning of the funnel. It's almost like it's handed off to myself and my colleagues in my function around kind of what is the actual opportunity for that and what can we do that is really differentiated to support our clients in addressing these kind of emerging needs.
Got you. And from your years of research, and I'm sure now corporate real estate is in a very interesting place with COVID and stuff. Yeah. What do you think are some of the trends or the opportunities or some things that's going to change, something that you believe will continue as it is from your years of experience, Susie?
Oh, that's a very, very good question. So I would say that, and this is not necessarily, I'm not the first person to say this, but I think that, what's happened over the last 6-8 months has really kind of accelerated things that were kind of gradually happening anyway, right? So I don't think the office is going to disappear, right? I think people are loving the idea of going back to the office. Where I live now in Denmark, we do have offices open, although albeit at reduced capacity, and they're operating at that level, right? People are really keen to go back to the office and have that connection and have that change of pace, right? That's the thing about working from home all the time. It's very convenient, but at the same time, those of us who are used to going to the office sometimes, traveling sometimes, attending conferences, it's a lot of the same, right? So I think that having a balance between some time in the office, some time at home, and really the empowerment of the worker around making those decisions is that is what is going to happen, right? I don't think there's obviously not either extreme. We're not going to go, oh yeah, everything's going back to normal in a year's time and everyone's going back to the office. That's, the horse has left the barn. That's not happening. And I do think that, the emphasis on health and well-being, I think that was emerging anyway, but that's actually taken on even more of a priority. And that's certainly something that we're seeing and hearing from our clients and talking to people. But I don't think that this is change that is shocking to anyone. I think there is a bias towards quote unquote normality. But I do think that people have gotten used to convenience, and we do have the tools to make this happen, make our work happen anywhere very easily. I think there's going to be a balance. There's going to be office, there's going to be home time, and we're all going to be empowered to do that. And our companies are going to have to learn how to support us in different ways. There's a lot of emphasis in the past few years on kind of amenities in the office. What's going to happen if, half the time we're not in the office? How are they going to provide that same sort of support for people? What does that mean in terms of your, working from home, right? And having that remote connection. So I think there will be a rethink about what that means and what a well-supported, great experience for employees means if it's in the home environment as well as the office.
Totally. So what interesting or what useful sources of research that you recommend that colleagues or listeners can tap into?
Oh, well, I would say that in my current, actually, I would say in both roles, I think that I wouldn't pinpoint a single source, but I would say broader current awareness of what's happening in the world and thinking about how that translates into the working environment is really important. So I think that, reading the FT and reading The Economist and everything that's going on a more macro level and a socioeconomic level is really important, right? I think that's, in terms of our, when I was doing kind of the broader thought leadership, this was really important, right? Because we're thinking about these broad trends and how they impact, the workplace and our business, right? In corporate solutions. I mean, right now I work with, all sorts of products, right? Everything from energy and sustainability to facilities management to, portfolio strategy. All of those are products and services that I support in terms of helping them think through components of their strategy. So that's a whole other kettle of fish, right? You need to think about a lot of different sources and more specialized sources around those. But I would say that, anything kind of on a more broader macro picture is just as important as, reading a research report on what the rents are, what's happening with rents in London or something like that, right? Is in terms of understanding what's happening in the market and having a more nuanced and forward-looking view on what's happening.
For close to 15 plus years in the real estate industry, and you've also been in multi-geographies as well. What have you seen, or how has the real estate market evolved, not just in one sector, one geography, but as a whole across globally in different geographies as well?
Yeah, it's funny that you asked that, because I did start, most of my exposure when I was working and living in the US was really around the residential market during that really bubble time in the mid 2000s. I would say that, how has it evolved? It's definitely technology is, a very obvious answer, but I think the prevalence of technology and how that's affected our working environment and the market overall is, can't be overstated. I'm thinking about, and it's evolved very quickly as well, right? I mean, just in terms of and this is a very, very micro example of real estate, but when I moved from the US to the UK, I actually had my own desk, right? My assigned desk. I actually shipped over boxes of stuff, like papers that I felt that I needed in terms of doing my day-to-day work. When I when I moved just recently from Singapore to Europe, I didn't take a single thing. I took my laptop, right? Everything has been really driven by technology, and our work and the workplace is much more technology driven than it ever was. Funnily enough, I think some things, the more things change, the more things stay the same. I know that, and it's just that due to COVID and due to technology, things have become more accelerated. So like flexibility, right? I'd say that I've worked very flexibly myself over a very long time. I worked on a global team on and off for probably 10 years now, right? So working across different time zones with management and stakeholders in different time zones, right? So I've always worked very flexibly. And I remember like when I was doing my work in London, we had clients asking about different strategies around flexibility. So there's been an interest. It's just accelerated, right? And it's been enabled by technology to accelerate even more. And then with the tailwinds of COVID, that's made it happen even faster. But I would say that that is probably the biggest change and the biggest component of how it's evolved. But go to somewhere like Singapore, there's still a lot of offices being developed. There's still kind of a bias towards kind of the traditional way of doing things. Maybe that will change in the coming years as that kind of balance of time spent in the office becomes less. But it's not changed as much as I think we might like to think. But I do think things like technology are definitely what stands out to me as the most notable change.
Totally. And I love the way you said you shipped boxes of stuff. Right. Yeah, I think that those are very, very good memories of how evolved we are as people.
Yeah.
So JLL, you moved from McKinsey to JLL, and inside JLL, you are Asia Pacific, and from there to Denmark now. How do you adapt? Because I know colleagues now, they all are working from home, Susie, but you have been an avid traveler work-wise. How do you quickly adapt? Do you have any tips or, taking different roles from US, UK, Asia Pacific, now back to Europe again? What advice would you give somebody who's considering a global career like yours?
Oh, wow. Well, I think you have to keep an open mind, right? You can't expect things to be exactly the same as where you came from, right? For me, I've always been very, very excited about learning about new places and exploring them and new ways of working, because that's also something very important, is that the way people work is very different in each location I'm in. Right now, I work from home full-time forever. This is not a temporary situation for me. So I'm not sure if I will get fully immersed in the Danish workplace, although I learn a lot from my husband, what he's told me, having worked in the UK and in Singapore as well. But I think you have to keep an open mind. You have to be patient with it. You have to be patient through the excitement, and then you kind of go down into a trough around, oh, I'm actually away from the things that I knew, the people that I knew, my family, right? So you have to kind of bear with that kind of downward part of the cycle and really try to make the best of it. I always kind of step back and I say, if I'm having kind of a bad moment, or if I'm kind of moved to a new place and I'm suddenly feeling, I'm feeling a bit lonely, I step back and I think about what an amazing opportunity I'm having right now. Very few people in the world, in my life, actually, have been able to do what I've done or would have done what I've done. And so I try to kind of have that moment of appreciation of the opportunity to do what I'm doing, right? Rather than get kind of stuck into, oh, I don't know anyone, or I'm really frustrated with, how things are in my current office, or how people work, or, that sort of thing. You just have to kind of write it out and give yourself patience to learn both the place and how people behave and the workplace norms and everything like that. I think that's really important, being open-minded and patient with it, and also being sure to put yourself out there, right? And make sure you're making connections with people locally, as well as maintaining them with your friends and colleagues elsewhere. So which is something like, for example, right after I started speaking to you today, I was just having a chat with one of my former team members in Singapore, right? And it was really, really great to understand what she's working on and some of the things she's still been working on from several months ago when I worked with her. So yeah, I really think that's important too, to have that sense of continuity.
Corporate strategic research, sometimes, we might be thinking, we know this already, you're just telling us with some data, or, sometimes when we come out with these trends and opportunities, we are looked at it like, and I don't think that will never happen. So from your experience of being, a strategic research lead for global companies, what's that one common myth that you want to debunk?
Oh, I would say that it's easy, right? I think to people of different levels of exposure to research and what it means, right? I think it's more important than people give it credit for, because it kind of underpins everything, right? What we are doing. I think that. Yeah, I think there's a view that, there's, you just can like download a report and it tells me everything, right? And, I can just pull something and that all the answers are there. Particularly in what I'm, some of the areas I'm looking at now, the answers are not clear, right? It really takes a lot of, there's a little bit of art mixed with the science, let's put it that way, right? Because we have to look at, what is the data? What are we hearing? What are reports telling us? And we have to kind of make some assumptions to create that picture. And also that there's not one piece of data or one report that will tell you everything, right? As I always often say, we can look at kind of quantitatively what the market opportunity is for said product, right? What is the market size? But you also need to look at, who are our competitors? What are our capabilities? How are things evolving trend-wise that provide that kind of a momentum around this product? So it's actually, it's a story more than a set of facts, let's put it that way. So it takes a lot more than just pulling off a report and reading something and then everything. It's really, a multifaceted picture that takes some time to put together to really understand, a particular space, a particular product, and where they're operating.
Totally there. So I totally agree with you on that. COVID.
Yes.
When COVID happened, you were in Singapore, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So when the announcement came, where were you, and what's the first thing that you did?
Yeah, I mean, well, Singapore, as you may know, kind of went through a funny kind of roller coaster time around COVID. So Singapore was one of the first countries in the world outside of China that had any COVID cases. So around like the end of January, when was Chinese New Year, there was a little bit of nervousness around, but it was also seen that the Singapore government was managing it really well, right? And we thought, and people got very comforted that we would not be entering any kind of lockdown or anything. So as it moved into kind of February and early March, it, we kind of felt very, very safe and secure in a little island, that everything was being managed. The government had put into place such a great system, having been exposed to, SARS and other things before, that, everyone felt very comforted by that. But then it started to kind of gradually kind of explode in Singapore. And then the rest of the world did. And I remember sitting there in Singapore when my colleagues in the UK and the US were kind of all of a sudden staying home, everything was locking down. You look at the news feed and I think, oh my God, what's happening? Like, with all this work that I'm doing, does this mean anything? What's happening? And it was a very worrying time, but we thought, okay, but here in Singapore, we can, we're very fortunate to be able to continue life. But so it wasn't until early April that we locked down. I think it was like the Prime Minister gave a speech and, they announced this was going to happen a couple of days later. And I think the first thing I did was plot out my trip to IKEA to set up my home office, because we didn't live in a very big place in Singapore. My husband and I both had to work there. So we had to kind of set up the arrangements. But I think it was it was a bit of disbelief that Singapore had gotten to the place that they felt that this was necessary after managing it very well in the end. And it's, I think it's paying off because, that the situation in Singapore is very well under control when it's not in other places of the world. But it was a very worrying time. In fact, I was just telling my husband the other day, I was thinking about kind of that March, April time period. And I didn't really realize at the time, it was quite an anxious time. But if I think about it now, I think, oh, I don't want to go back to that. I don't even want to think about that because it was more stressful, I think, for all of us than we even maybe realized at the time. So yeah, that seems like a while ago now, but it wasn't.
Totally. Working in global environments also comes with working in different time zones as well. Susie, Singapore 8 hours kind of ahead from Europe, or 9, I think. US is a different time zone, and you do have teams based across the globe. How do you plan your work around time zones?
Oh, this is a very big issue in my life. And has been for this last several months. Well, as I mentioned before, I've worked in global teams on and off, since about 2010, 2011. The last couple of years in McKinsey working for the infrastructure real estate practice, my manager was in the US, I was in the UK. My closest colleague geographically was in Belgium. I had a number of colleagues and team members in India. So I wasn't a global team at that time. But in the UK and in Europe, we're very fortunate in not having to deal with the problems with working on a global team so much. But and when I was in Asia Pacific, my role was primarily focused there. So that was pretty manageable. But yes, since earlier this year, I've been on a global team with my manager based in the US. So being in Singapore, it just required a lot of flexibility. And I started working in the morning, talking to people in the US in their evening. I would often work for a few hours. I would take kind of a big break, and then I would work late in the evening, right? Maybe 8 to 11 p.m., right, is when I would have my next set of calls with the US. And it is tough, but at the end of the day, I knew that this was finite because I was due to move to Europe within the next few months. So, but I have to say, since I've been here, I now have 2 people working for me who just joined my team in the last few months that are based in the US. My manager is based in the US, and I also have a team member who's based in Singapore. So I'm constantly conscious of working across all these time zones, although I'm lucky enough to have it, relatively within working hours. So I get to keep a relatively stable schedule. But, in terms of dealing with my team, I do try to talk to all of them every day, because even if it was not COVID times, I would still be remote from my direct reports. I talk to each one of them basically every day. And, the tools that we have, Microsoft Teams and other ways, it's very easy for us to do that. But, I think we're all very flexible, and I respect their need to work very flexibly as well. And they know that I'm not fussed about schedules as long as I know that they're doing their job, and they're basically all really happy with that. So I'm not had any issues at all. So I'm quite fortunate in that way.
Totally. I think because the new normal meant like there is not much, the work-life balance that we all asked for has now been given on a massive scale. But
yeah, exactly. There's nobody checking anything, but I think the vast majority of people, are pretty okay with that. They manage it really well, getting the work done, fitting in the personal time where they need it. And they know that they can ask me if they need help in balancing, if things feel like they're out of balance, then they can always come to me, and we will work to rectify that. Because I do think it's really important, right? I don't want anybody working 14 hours a day and from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. just because they're in Asia or something like that. So, yeah.
Totally. I think we talked about your early life, career, and a little bit about COVID as well. Maybe let's talk a little bit more about your hobbies and interests and other interesting things about you. Tell us the 3 things not many people know about you.
Okay, I'm trying to think. Well, one thing I would say, but I've already said this, is that I am a librarian. So, but not that many people do know about it. They might see that, I have this kind of master's degree, but they might not equate that with, having that actual title, right? So that's one thing. I am very into kind of crime and suspense books and podcasts. Even though they scare me, I really like them. I don't know what that says about me, but I'm really enjoying those. And some other things that people don't know about me. I'm quite into. I've always been quite into fitness, but latterly I've gotten really into CrossFit, which is something that my husband and I have started doing here in Denmark, because we have a really nice place to do it, and nice community around that. So I don't think that people would automatically look at me and associate me with kind of lifting heavy weights, but that's what I've gotten into doing. I was doing something kind of close to that latterly when I was in Singapore. So so I think I have a pretty diverse set of interests, including that.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So what crime podcast do you listen? Maybe you could share that. Yeah.
Yeah, I listened to a few of them. I mean, there's one called Cold Case that I listened to. There are also a few that are kind of almost series around specific incidents. There's one called Dirty John that I really liked, which has also become a Netflix series, which I haven't watched. That the podcast is really good. Those are two that I really like. I'm trying to think of the other one's names, and I'm totally drawing a blank. But the Cold Case is one. Sorry, I'm just kind of looking at my phone because I'm drawing a blank right now. Case File is also a good one. There's one called Uncover, My Favorite Murder. So there's a few of them. So there's actually a lot of them, because it's, as I understand, true crime, particularly with podcasts and with Netflix documentaries, and have had this resurgence. Well, all documentaries have, but particularly true crime. So, and I apparently fit the demographics. It's usually like middle-aged women that that really like them. So, yeah.
Yes, we need to keep ourselves mentally occupied, physically.
Yeah, great.
You're doing the right things there, Susie. And you also travel to many places. Do you have any favorite place that comes to mind?
Oh gosh. In terms of, I've been to so many wonderful places in the world that I'm very lucky to have gone to. Well, I would say that some of the most beautiful places I've been, I enjoyed. One was Margaret River in Western Australia, which is beautiful. And I think the beaches there are like the most beautiful I've ever seen and ever been to. A place that my husband and I went on a few different occasions that we just really liked, because I think there's some merit in, once you find somewhere you like, just keep going there, as well as in addition to going and exploring new places. One of those is Langkawi, which is in Malaysia, which I really, really enjoyed. And I really liked Sardinia in Italy. I went there. I haven't been there for some time, but I really, really loved it there in terms of the landscape and the beach. I do have like a soft spot for beautiful beaches. And just this past week, I went to this small island in Denmark called Iro with my husband and my son for a nice little autumn winter holiday, and it was absolutely beautiful. It was just such a lovely place and a really nice surprise. We're lucky enough here in Denmark, being new to the country, to have a plethora of new places to explore, despite not being able to travel more broadly, right? So so those are just a few of the most memorable places that I've visited.
what trait do you like the most about yourself?
Oh, I would say that I'm really adaptable, right? I don't think I would have been able to make the moves, international moves I have done, change jobs that I have done without, being a bit more adaptable. I think it would be really hard to do that without being that way, to have kind of be very fixed in terms of your mindset and how you do things. I mean, I think it's really important. And I think that I definitely have that. And I'm able to kind of find a way to fit in and to work with different teams and different people pretty easily. And, also to work across different cultures. I mean, as I said, I think you need to be very open-minded and patient, but also adaptable. So I think that's probably what I like the most about myself is my ability to do that.
Beautiful. So if you're having a bad day, what do you do to make yourself feel better?
Oh, I would say that I just play with my son, my 4-year-old son, because I think often when I'm feeling bad, a lot of it is not necessarily, something terrible has happened, right? It's just that, kind of an accumulation of different small things or just being frustrated with something, nothing truly terrible has happened. So sometimes you just need to step away from it. And for me, that means kind of playing with my son and spending time with him, just kind of going away from the source of it, right? And that really takes my mind off of things, and I'm not able to dwell on anything about work or anything else bad that's happening if, when I'm playing with my son, who's very excited and innocent and energetic about other things. It completely takes my mind off of the, whatever has brought me down on a particular day.
Beautiful. And if I ask you a little son, tell me why you love mommy, what do you think he will tell about you?
I would say that he would just say, I love mommy. I would say that because I play with him. We play hide and seek. We play lots of silly games, and we get to be very silly together. So, because he has an amazing sense of humor for a little boy. So we often are kind of joking with each other and things like that. And he likes hide and seek as well. And I usually indulge him with some hide and seek, even though he has to ask me where I hide first, but that's okay. He doesn't really understand the point, but he likes to pretend to play hide and seek. So I think it's because I will play that with him when he asks me.
Got you. So what's something of sentimental value to you?
Oh, that's a funny question because I am not a particularly sentimental person. I am not about belongings, right? And I think I have to be that way because I couldn't move around and carry things around if I was very sentimental about a lot of things. What am I sentimental about? I think is anything related to my son, right? So I have, for instance, I have shipped, or they're on their way to Denmark, my son's baby clothes, right? I'm not going to have any more children, but I just don't want to let go of his baby clothes. And I want to just have them because they'll always remind me of that very special time. So yeah, anything related to him, and especially his kind of babyhood, I'm very sentimental about. But in terms of my life, there's not much because I think I have really wonderful memories, but I don't have them necessarily attached to any kind of specific physical thing, right? So yeah, it has to be my son.
Totally. So if there is a fight between Spider-Man and Batman, who do you think will win?
Oh, see, I'm the wrong person to ask because I'm not one of these comic people. I would say Spider-Man, right? Because he can jump really far. He can kind of leap over any kind of altercation and go out of the way. Batman, he just has a car, right? So that would be my answer. I don't know. Maybe he has a plane now. I have no idea, but that would be my guess. I think that's, yeah, that's what I would say.
Got you. If you win $1 billion, what will you buy first?
Oh, I would probably buy a holiday home somewhere. I'm not sure exactly where. I'd have to discuss it with my husband. I'd probably want to buy it somewhere like near a beautiful beach or something like that. He would maybe not so much, maybe because he doesn't like beaches. I would, yeah, that's definitely, I would definitely buy that, and I would probably buy a new home for maybe someone in my family or something like that. Yeah, I would do that. I would probably buy another car. So we have two cars. Although we don't really need them, but it just might be fun. And yeah, I can't think of anything else that's really really big. And I just make sure that, when we took holidays, we would, do everything really well. Let's put it that way. I don't think I'd buy a plane or anything like that. I wouldn't want to have the trouble of it, but I would buy real estate.
Yes, you have done all the research and you know the data behind it.
Right.
Investment, Susie, that's great. So if you could be invisible for a day, what would you do?
Oh, this probably will make sense based on what I just said, but I would probably go to like celebrity homes or really fabulous homes and just poke around to see what they're like. Not in people's personal stuff, but just to see what they look like, what the view is. Yeah, I would probably do that. Yeah, just to kind of, I find it really interesting. I like different people's homes and how they decorate them. And we have just bought a home here. So I'm kind of in that state of mind and thinking about, what I'm going to be doing to my new house. So yeah, clearly that reflects that. I want to see what other people have done so I can take some inspiration.
Got you. If you could be a male or a female sports star, who would you be?
A male or female, like a specific person?
Yeah,
or male or female? I don't know. I don't want to be male. A sports star, not really. I'm not really a sports sort of person. I would probably be someone like Serena Williams, right? Because she's really just amazing, an amazing person, an amazing athlete, the greatest of all time. It must be amazing to be in that sort of position, right? That that you're one of the best that has ever done something, some specific discipline or job or task. That must be a very unique, perhaps lonely place to be, but probably someone like her.
totally. Do you think aliens are real?
Yes, I do. I mean, I would say that there may be some life form somewhere, but if we're thinking about like our traditional conception of what a little funny green guy or no, but there, it's highly possible that there is a parallel solar system somewhere out there. And there could be a whole planet just like Earth where they might look exactly like us, or they might look slightly different. They might have a similar type of life. We just don't know. So I would say, yeah, I don't believe in UFOs or anything like that, but I do think there may be life, and there's just no way of knowing if it's there or not.
Got you. So what's in your bucket list for the rest of your life?
My bucket list. I would, what do I want to do? What do I actually think I will do, or what would be like a aspirational? I guess that what the bucket list is aspirational, isn't it?
Totally, yes.
I would like to definitely travel. I would love to go to all the places I've wanted to go to. I'd love to take my son with me. For example, he's very interested in Antarctica. I'd love to go to Antarctica. Love to go to like the Arctic Circle. Being in Scandinavia now, I'm looking forward to exploring more of Scandinavia. I would also like to have a holiday home sometime in the future, not too distant future. Again, there's a theme here. That's something that I would like to do. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty simple. I think, yeah, probably travel, having a really nice place to live and a nice place to escape in terms of a holiday home, are probably, yeah, that's probably on my bucket list. Yeah, I can't think of anything else that's like really big and aspirational because I'm pretty content with most things day to day. And I've already gotten to do so much traveling in my life. So I think it's just ticking off the places I haven't been, right? Or going to some amazing resorts, right? That develop, like maybe I'd like to go to New Zealand. I'd like to go to the South Pacific as well. So yeah, all of those things.
Perfect. So if you are chosen to make a special dinner for a very special guest, who will you invite and what will you cook?
Oh, wow. That's tough. Who would my guest be? Oh, that is a very difficult question. There's so many people that would be interesting to talk to. Probably somebody like Obama, right? I would love to just hear about what he actually thinks about things, right? Because I know that he's very polite, and especially in the current environment, he's, kind of rises above it all, but I'd love to hear what he actually thinks about what's going on in the world. And I'd probably cook him something like, oh, what would I make him? Probably something like Asian. I'd maybe make him like a nice like Thai meal or something like that, just because I like it. And I think he'd probably be very amenable to that as well. But yeah, I think he's someone who's had a very unique view of the world and telling me what it's really like, right? I'd love to hear more about that.
That's nice. So who are the people who have been the most influential in your life and career?
Oh, wow. So I would say that in terms of my career, I mean, I spoke at the beginning about my first bosses and my first job. And I would say they were really influential because they gave me an opportunity. I was not sure where I was going to go at that time. And I got so much confidence from them, right? They gave me responsibilities. It gave me opportunities to learn. It wasn't just, here's work, take it. They would really take the time to explain it to me. And it just really boosted my confidence and made me think, wow, I can, there are a lot of opportunities open to me. I can do something really well. I do have the confidence of people that are much more experienced and mature than me. And that was really good. And that really served me well and kind of really had helped me in the future. I would say, one of my more recent bosses at JLL, Dr. Megan Walters, she was quite influential for me and always 100% supportive of me. And I also think is just a very strong figure and very supportive of other women in the industry, and so it's not just me. I know a lot of other people would count her as being quite influential. I would say that, in my life, I've always been quite an independent person. I have a wonderful family. I would say that my dad, because he's always kind of quietly supported me, he hasn't always been vocal about it, but I know he's always been there. And he's always been behind me. And also my grandmother, who passed away probably about 12, 13 years ago. She was in a very similar way. And she was someone that was influential to me because she always had a lot of international friends. She traveled a lot. She had a lot of exchange students. And I think a lot of that curiosity around the world around her and having, having these friends from all over the world definitely rubbed off on me in terms of how I've lived my life. So she was a pretty remarkable woman. So she was definitely a big influence and someone I spent a lot of time with throughout my younger life.
Oh, that's beautiful. You have so much abundance in your life there.
Thank you. I am really lucky for sure.
Who's the kindest person you know?
Oh. I'm thinking about this. Who is the kindest person I know? I have a friend, a couple of friends that I think would be would fit that description, right? People that I have one friend who is just so. I'm not going to mention specific names necessarily, but she is just always so positive, right? I mean, she will not hear any kind of negativity, right? She just has this very gentle way of dealing with everything, right? And if I'm ever kind of worried or upset about something, she'll just kind of gently push back on it, right? And she'll just say, as you said, like, think about, everything that you've done, thinking about everything that you've achieved, thinking about the good fortune that you have. And like you said, that's kind of rubbed off on me a little bit because, as I said at the beginning, I need to sometimes step back and think about these things and not get, dragged down by kind of day-to-day things that might frustrate me. Right. So, yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. So what's the best piece of advice you've received and from whom?
The best piece of advice I've received. I've gotten a lot of bad advice, but I'm glad I've ignored all of it. And I'm trying to think about what that might be. I would say that my mom used to always say things like, don't worry about the small things, right? Just like I was saying before, it's like you just don't sweat the small stuff. I mean, it's a simple and well-worn phrase, but it's very, very true, right? Because if you do, it's quite exhausting, right? You have to kind of think about the big picture, right? And, everything kind of happens for a reason. If you kind of get stuck into that ebb and flow of day to day and don't step back and think about, everything generally does work out. It does kind of quite help, right? Because of course there's going to be ups and downs and good and bad day to day. But if you kind of step back and look at kind of the big picture, that really does help, right? And generally things do, right? I mean, I think like in my life, I never had a path that I knew I wanted to go down in terms of my career, my life, right? I've had moments in my life where I've had things come to me, right? And I wouldn't say they're like manifestations, not to get into spiritual, but I know that might be called a manifestation where I'm like, I remember several years ago, I had this idea that popped in my head. It's like, I'm going to live somewhere really warm in my life. And then a couple of years later, I'm living in Singapore, right? Or, and I will have kind of an unusual life. And I have, right? I mean, that could be interpreted in different ways. So I think that everything eventually works out but you just can't get bogged down day to day. There's always going to be the day-to-day frustrations. I'm still learning that. I still have to take that on board sometimes, but I try to focus on that.
That's great. So what's one thing you wish you had known when you began your career?
Oh, that's a really good one. I would say that the one thing I wish I would have known is just as I was saying, kind of everything sort of happens for a reason, right? That, you can plan only so much. There are a lot of things that will happen that will influence you. They're a bit out of your control, right? your boss might change, you might lose your job, right? But that's all, it's all kind of part of, I wouldn't say the plan, but you just have to kind of go with the flow a little bit, right? Do your best, think about where you want to be, but at the same time, opportunities are always opening themselves up to you. So you can't over plan, right? Because you really, really never know. And again, it's about keeping an open mind and seeing where things take you. I mean, when I was, I moved to Denmark because of my husband took a job here, right? And and I knew that meant that I would leave the role that I had in Singapore, in my Asia Pacific role, which I really enjoyed. But I was very fortunate that another opportunity has kind of opened itself up at the same time. I wouldn't have predicted that happening. That was just sort of kind of by chance, but that sort of thing often happens, right? And I'm not saying that there aren't, people don't go through tough times, but usually things will work out, right? Don't get too bogged down. They will work out.
That's really, really, really useful advice there.
Yeah.
So, what's something that you're looking forward to in the future?
Oh, in the near future, I'm really looking forward to seeing my family again. Well, I'm hoping to see them in December, my family in the US. I'm really looking forward to moving into my new home that we have purchased here, which even though we've closed the purchase, we can't move in for a few months because the previous owner is building her own home. And so she's waiting for that to be finished. But luckily we have a lot of flexibility where we are right now. So yeah, I'm very, very excited about that. And we'll be moving in probably in time for it to be spring and summer, which is really nice and something everyone looks forward to here in Denmark, where it's already getting a bit cold. So those are some of my, so I have a lot to look forward to, in the next several months.
So we talked about your life, career, a little bit about real estate, more about the hobbies, interests, and some random questions finally people in your life. Is there anything else you would like to share to listeners, or is there any other part of your life that we missed that you want to maybe share in the last 1 or 2 minutes?
No, I don't think so. I think that I've moved a lot in my career, but I've also spent a lot of time in, even short stints when I was with McKinsey, and even before that when I was studying in various different countries. So I was thinking the other day, what are the countries where I've spent more than like a month at a time? And it's quite a few. It's probably 6 or 7 countries, I think, probably more. So yeah, so I think I would just say that kind of global experience, it's been super valuable. And like I said, it's not anything that I necessarily planned for everything to go down that path, but it's really great. And I think that having the opportunities or creating them for mobility, whether it's within your own country or across the world is really important. But no, I think we've kind of covered everything. But I really appreciate the chance to talk to you today. This has been really fun.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Susie, for your time today at Baachu Talk. It's been an absolute privilege to have you here as my close friend, and also as a person who has been observing the market, real estate market for a very long time as a thought leader. So thank you so much again, and wish you, your family, your JLL colleagues, and everybody around you all the good health and happiness. Stay healthy, stay happy, stay sane. And so looking forward to speaking to you soon. Thank you, Susie.
Thanks. Thanks so much. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Please do visit baachu.com/Baachu Talk podcast to this specific episode link to everything that was mentioned in this episode. Don't forget to subscribe, review, and share Baachu Talk podcast with your loved ones. We will see you at the next episode with another special guest. Until then, it's Bhaskar Sundram from Baachu signing off.